All right, we're going to shrink down, way, way down, to the microscopic level. Because down there, there's this silent, high-stakes war being fought literally every single second. And this isn't just, biology class stuff. It's a battleground. We're talking spies, saboteurs, and some of the best code breakers you could ever imagine.
So, here's a thought to kick us off. What if the most sophisticated spies in the entire world weren't human at all? What if they were microscopic? Pathogens that have spent, millions of years learning how to crack the most secure communication networks on the planet, the ones running inside our very own cells.
Okay, so before you can really appreciate the crime, you gotta understand the system they're targeting, right? So let's first take a look at how our cells normally talk to each other. Think of it as peacetime. It's this highly secure, incredibly specific network. So at the very heart of all this cellular chatter is a mechanism that's, it's simple, but it's brilliant. It's a lock and a key. A signaling molecule, which we call a ligand, that's our key, gets sent out. It just kind of floats around until it finds the one specific receptor, the lock, that it was made for. And when that key clicks into that lock, bam, the secret message gets delivered.
But, it's not just a simple open and shut case. That's just the beginning. The second that key binds, it causes the lock, our receptor, to physically change its shape. And that tiny little shift, it kicks off this massive chain reaction inside the cell. It's like a line of dominoes, a cascade of signals that carries that original message deep, deep into the cell's command center. It's just so elegant and crazy efficient. And of course, like any super secure system, it's a magnet for anyone who wants to break in. This is where our pathogens come onto the scene. They are the master code breakers of the natural world, and they have built up this huge arsenal of tools specifically designed to exploit this system for their own benefit.
Think about it for a second. Our cells are smart. They only open up for the right key. A pathogen can't just knock down the door. So, what's their move? Well, if you can't find the key, you forge one. Take HIV, for instance. It has this protein on its surface, GP120. It is a masterful forgery. It's shaped to fit perfectly into the CD4 receptor on our T cells, basically tricking the cell into swinging the door wide open. It's the ultimate cellular skeleton key.
And believe me, their toolkit is just packed with all sorts of gadgets. You've got guys like Neisseria gonorrhea that use proteins that are basically molecular superglue, making sure they can't get shaken off. Then there's Streptococcus, which wears this capsule. It's like an invisibility cloak to slip right past our immune system's security patrols. And then you get something like E. coli, which literally shoots out tiny grappling hooks to latch on and get ready to invade. It's incredible.
But here's the thing. Just getting inside, that's only phase one. For the really sophisticated players in this game, the goal isn't just to infect you. Oh no. The goal is to take over the entire operation from the inside. We're talking a complete hostile takeover. Yeah, this is where we level up from simple breaking and entering to something way more sinister. The most cunning of these pathogens, they don't just want to steal some resources. They want to reprogram the entire system. They turn the host cell from a victim into a willing accomplice.
Let me give you one of the most amazing examples of this, a bacterium called Agrobacterium tumefaciens. It is one of the most brilliant genetic engineers on the planet, seriously. It doesn't just infect a plant cell, it hacks it. It literally injects a piece of its own DNA directly into the plant's genome. And this new code forces the cell to do two things. First, it makes it produce a special, custom-made food source just for the bacteria. And second, it forces the cell to grow out of control, creating a tumor that serves as a perfect factory and fortress for the invader. It's just wow.
So, okay, we've established that these pathogens are absolute masters of deception and manipulation. But here's the plot twist. They're not just working alone. They're not lone wolves. They have their own secret communication network so they can coordinate their attacks. And the way they do it is by using these molecules called autoinducers. The best way to think of them is like chemical whispers. Every single bacterium just releases a tiny little bit of this stuff. And by listening to how many whispers are in the air around them, they can get a pretty good idea of how many of their buddies are nearby. It's basically a head count.
Right, so they're counting themselves. But why? What's the point? What happens when those whispers tell them that there are enough of them to actually make a move? Well, that's when things get really, really interesting.
This is a perfect illustration of a concept called quorum sensing. So check this out. There's this bacterium, Alevibrio fischeri. When there are only a few of them just kind of floating around, the level of those chemical whispers is super low. And nothing happens, they stay dark. But once they multiply and reach a critical mass, a quorum, that concentration of whispers suddenly becomes a roar. And that roar is the signal. It triggers a coordinated response and bam! They all switch on their lights and start to glow. It's how they decide as a group when it's time to launch a unified attack.
And the engine behind this ability to communicate and adapt is another system that's just beautifully simple. It's called a two-component system. You've got a sensor on the outside of the cell that detects a signal, like, say, that roar of autoinducers. It then passes that message to a response regulator on the inside. And that regulator, it's basically a switch that flips, changing the bacteria's genes and its behavior to perfectly match the new situation. It's just a super fast, super efficient way to react to the world.
Okay, let's pull back and look at the big picture for a second. What we've been talking about, it isn't just a random collection of clever biological tricks. No, what we're actually seeing is evidence of an ancient and still ongoing war. It's an invisible arms race between us, the hosts, and the pathogens. And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. Studying how pathogens cause disease, it's really about studying communication and how that communication gets corrupted. Disease isn't always just a random accident. It's a story of forged signals, hijacked networks, and secret messages being twisted for someone else's gain.
And you have to understand, this conflict is one of the most powerful driving forces in all of evolution. For millions of years, we've been developing more sophisticated locks, better alarm systems. And for all that time, pathogens have been evolving ever more clever keys and more advanced hacking tools. It's this relentless back-and-forth cycle of one-upmanship.
Which kind of leaves us with one final big question, doesn't it? If this whole battle against disease is really a war of information, then maybe the future of medicine isn't just about brute force attacks with antibiotics. Maybe it's about espionage. To really win, maybe we have to become better code breakers than they are. We have to learn to decipher their secret messages, jam their communication lines, and maybe, just maybe, turn their own incredibly sophisticated systems against them.